Hey everyone, this is Adam from the Little Music Podcast. This is last week's episode. If you want to listen to this week's episode, it's currently available right now on our Patreon. So if you want to hear that, consider joining our Patreon at patreon.com/Little Music Podcast. But if not, enjoy the show. Welcome to the Little Music Podcast, a podcast made by independent artists who kind of know what they're doing for independent artists who kind of don't know what they're doing. I'm your host, Adam from Keep It Inside.
And I'm Kevin from Castro.
So, Kevin, what is the worst IGDM you've ever received from an artist?
Boy, there's been a small collection now that has been growing, but there's one that has a special place in my heart because of how frustrating it became trying to deal with this. And I don't want to, nothing about the person was anything that bad, but it was just what they had did and like what I was getting into because, they approached me first, which has been common right now ever since, my biggest song, In Essence, ever since that got viral. It's a very sampleable song. I mean, there's no drums on it. It's a very moody ambient piece. So a lot of producers have been, they reach out to me and they just do a simple like, oh, hey, can I remix this?
Yeah.
I got that same DM from that person. I said yes to that. I gave my stipulations for what was behind it. And then they made the song. And I was like, cool, like, sounds great. Have fun with it. Good luck to you. But then it was what they came back with, or I guess it's what I found out afterwards, was the song came out by itself. And then I see on my main Spotify page, I see that I have a new release. That's not a good sign. It's not showing up in the appears on section, which is, on the bottom. A good spot for if you have features, it's a nice collection. It's showing up as I've released a new album.
So you talked to this person and they said, oh, I want to remix the song.
Yeah.
So you said, yeah, but here's the conditions for you releasing the song.
Yeah.
And then time goes by and then you find out that there is a new release on your Spotify.
Yeah.
How does that even work?
I see it like when I go to my page.
It's just like a new release.
Yeah, new release from Cat. Yeah. And what really got me unsettled was it wasn't just a single. I'm now part of an album. And I'm clicking through it and they added my name because you can add and do, which is cool. Like if it's done well, it's like you can now do main artists, between your collaborators. In this case, when it's good for a single, that's perfect. But they put my name on the entire album and I was listed and credited to like 15 songs. And here's the thing, it wasn't just one album, it was two different albums. They just put that same single on it.
Oh, sorry. So they put you on two separate albums, but they used the same song on both
albums. And they did.
What the heck?
And they put my name on every track. And the weird consolation that they thought would be okay with was like, oh, don't worry, I added, and I did get the emails for this, but like I added you as a split, like we'll split the whole album. And I'm like, why are you you've credited me on like 30 songs that I had nothing to do a part of. The main song that you wanted to work on with me was simply a sampled song, which I was totally fine with and sign off. And they showed it to me. I was like, this is cool. Like, awesome. Great job. But then they totally overstepped their boundaries. What was the straw that broke the camel's back was when my mom texted me and she was like, wow, like, what are these albums? And I was like, oh my God, like, I didn't work on any of this. Like, and I don't even, it wasn't that it was bad. It was just like,
they overstepped
their boundaries so much. Thankfully, I do want to say like they'd worked with me like very nicely. They were just like, they're very apologetic. I don't want to, be too hard on them because they were, like they're a newer artist and it's like, I could see it in that moment thinking that, oh, well, I gave them, I'm giving them splits. This seems to be good for both of us. But it's like, that's just not how you deal with this stuff.
Wait, so when you found out about it, did you send them a DM?
Oh, yeah.
What did you say to them?
I was like, hey, I noticed that there's two albums on my page and my name is on it. Mm-hmm. And at first I wanted to be like, oh, was this a mistake? Because I did mention that you wanted to just put me on as like a main artist for like the single version of that song. Yeah. And I was like, cool, because it's just the single. Yeah. But then they're like, well, I just figured if you're going to show up again, I thought it was okay to put you as a main artist on two different albums. And I was like, don't do that. Like, it was crazy. I mean, thankfully it was rectified, but it was painful to
what
just
a-
go back and forth.
What a way to take advantage of your Spotify page. Just to,
I don't want to think so cynically, but it does come off that way, you know?
I mean, it basically is. They're giving you the 50% split.
Yeah.
But they're also taking advantage of the fact that they get to have a front row seat on like to your entire
Yeah.
audience.
Especially on stuff that I didn't work on. That was
Yeah.
that's what really got to me was like, I didn't have anything to do with this. I was
Yeah.
like, wasn't necessarily begging, but they tried to like, not argue with me, but they were like, no, like, see it this way. And I was like, I didn't work on this. Please do not. Like, why would you think that?
Yeah,
like,
that's insane.
I was trying to be like, how would you feel if someone would just added your name to something that you hated? You know, it turned out fine because this is not like, it's music that's made in the style that even then, that doesn't excuse it, you know?
Yeah.
What's your worst one?
So I had a couple, and I was thinking about it before we started recording because I had one in mind because that happened to me very recently.
Oh, damn.
But there was another one that happened to me further back that I feel like I'm debating with myself in real time now. Like what's worth it to say. But I'll say
Trauma is just coming back.
honestly, it's flooding back to me. I'll say the most recent one because it's the one that's most in my head right now. And it was this guy who sent me a DM and just said, hey, I got a release for, it's like, remember the song we were working on? It's like, it's releasing this weekend.
Was it something you'd recently worked on, or was it something?
It's
past?
something we've been previously working on from a while back.
Okay.
But what caught me off guard is like, that seems like a normal message.
Yeah.
But what caught me off guard was the fact that we didn't talk at all in terms of like what the release is supposed to look like.
Yeah.
So no splits, mention of splits.
It's already like, hey, the song's coming out.
Yeah, no mention of, I thought they were just working on it.
Yeah.
Right? And then they just come back and they're like, okay, it's releasing on this and this.
Oh,
And then
no.
I was like, okay, what do you mean releasing?
Yeah.
We haven't, like, what about my splits?
Yeah.
What about, like, how is it going to be released?
Yeah.
You gave me no information. So I just got back to them and I told them, oh, what are my splits going to be? It's like, what do the splits and the publishing splits look like? And they're like, oh, I just assumed that we're going to do it for free.
Oh my
I'm
god.
like, what? Okay. I was like, that's crazy
Yeah.
of you to assume. So here's what I'm going to, I don't agree to this being released unless I get what I'm due. Or either that, or you just pay me out front and then, we
Yeah.
don't have to think about this.
Typical sort of deal.
Then so that gets situated, right? That was another stressful moment where I had to threaten them to not release. The other one was
I'd hate to see those kneecaps get broken.
the other one was I just wanted to check to make sure, just because they didn't discuss anything with me. I was like, I just want you to know that I want to be a featured artist on this song and
Yeah.
not a primary artist. I thought that was assumed
Yeah.
because they didn't ask for me to be a primary artist.
Because they're releasing it as a single,
Yeah.
so that it would have shown up like.
Yeah, so I just told them I want this to be a feature, and they're like, "Why?"
Oh no.
And that is not
That is not how you
is,
respond.
Like, if you had a reason why and incentive for me to say no, that's something else.
Yeah.
But if you're just saying like, "Why would you do that?" Like, I thought we were friends, kind of
Oh,
thing.
God.
It's like instantly my
guilting you,
heart sank because I'm just like, oh my God, I have to deal with this again. Because I have dealt with stuff like that before. And just to go through the entire like sequence of me being calculative with all of my Instagram messages, because, messages can hold weight or like words that are sent to somebody else. So I'm
That
just
is
like,
how messaging. I think you just
yes,
explained
I'm
it.
just like documented messages is what I meant.
When one puts word into written language, meaning becomes sent. Sorry.
So I'm just sending very well written messages to them just
You're
so that
spelling
they
it all out.
understand.
Yeah.
They can understand clearly what I want. And they were just like, "What? Why? Why would you do that?" It's like everybody. Okay, this was what got me.
Yeah.
They said everybody else said it was fine, so I just thought you would think it's fine. And I was like, everybody else thought it was fine, and you didn't include me into everybody.
Yeah.
You didn't talk
You're
to me.
separate from everybody else.
I'm getting like really amped up
Yeah.
right now thinking about it. But the fact that they didn't even consider to talk to me about you know, before the release, before telling me it's going to be released,
Yeah.
about what I wanted, and then just went to everybody else and thinking like, oh, they like it, so he must like it. I'm a different person.
Yeah.
I'm a different person with different needs, and I feel like everybody should respect that
Yeah.
and not just assume anything about just other people. Especially in discussions. You should include everybody in the discussion.
Laying it all out.
But yeah, that was my worst one that has stayed with me. I forgot about it, moved on, and for the sake of this podcast,
I had to trudge it up. Thanks.
I had to reopen the scar.
Yeah. Thanks, buddy. You know, like, great. Now I don't want to do this show.
So, given
Without all that said.
with your experience,
Yeah.
I know that must have been pretty stressful to just deal
Yeah,
with.
it was stressful. It definitely wasn't as traumatic as yours.
Yeah, I
but
would-
the stress of it was,
It's not
it was there, you know?
necessarily traumatic. It's just you just have to deal with it,
Yeah.
and you just assume that people should know.
yeah, I know.
So, what do you think people should know? Like, how would that ideal conversation look like?
What are the standards,
Yeah.
I guess? Yeah. So are we assuming that it's like, we've already agreed, all right, let's work. We've broken through there.
Someone who has been making music has found you
Yeah.
and was like, oh, I really want to work with this person or sample their stuff
Yeah.
or whatever. And they reach out to you and they say, hey, Castro, I'd love to work with you. What now?
Well, I would have to figure out what's like the scope of the project. But I guess in this case, you're just saying it's like, oh,
just
they're
like
sampling.
a feature.
Yeah,
Let's say a feature.
A feature, a vocal feature for me. Wow. No, I'd love to see how that would turn out. I mean, I'd probably go in the song.
They want to use your beat.
Yeah.
Let's go that route.
I would say, I mean, it's as simple as, I mean, I'm thinking about it right now of with how easy it is to do distribution. I'm always already going to kind of lay out, it's like, you know, is this going to be on stream? Like, what is the purpose of the song? And I'll be understanding if they're going to say like, oh, this is, I'm not even going to like release this in any official capacity. Like, I just want to like make the song. And I always just go like, yeah, sure. I mean, you know, I don't,
Okay.
I sample whatever I want. But when it becomes like an official release, first, is this for streaming? Is money going to be involved? Like, are you, you know, going to be making money off of this? Which is, you know, I and not even say that's a bad thing. It's just like, okay, cool. So there's going to be
More questions,
more
more-
questions because
Yeah.
sometimes people don't lead with that. They're just like, cool, I just want to sample this. And then I have to kind of prod and be all like, are you going to be releasing this or what is it for? You know, because I don't care if someone's going to like, it's case by case. I mean, sometimes there are people who just, you know, sample the entire thing and minimally add stuff, and I'll be asking for a much larger cut, of course, you know.
Yeah.
Or they'll be really creative with it, and I'll be like, wow, like, I loved how you really transformed it and really made it your own thing.
So you're going to be asking them for a certain percentage based on your parameters. And then what else are you also asking for?
And then I'll decide whether if I want it to be like a main artist or like featured sort of thing, because it's to open up that this is a conversation, you know,
Yeah.
just like what we're trying to hash out, you know.
It's something that both of you have to agree on, right?
Because sometimes it can be a very mutually beneficial sort of thing, or sometimes it's just like, all right, I had such a minimal part in this, you know, I'd rather just, I do want my name on it. I want to make sure that there's proper accreditation,
Yeah.
proper splits to it. So that's kind of the next step.
What do you consider when thinking about, oh, this will be a main artist release or like a dual release rather than a featured one?
One part is more subjective, where if I really like the song, especially if the sample's used in like a very like obvious way, then
This is if they're
if they're sampling me, yeah.
sampling you.
And the other thing is like reach. You know what I mean? Like how much of their online presence, because it can
reach for you or reach for them?
I think, I don't know, it's hard to say, maybe both. I mean, as I said, it's like it could be something that's mutually beneficial. And I'm not trying to say it's like, oh, I'm only going to decide it based off this, but I do think about that where I'm like, what does it mean to be adding my name to this and be called like a main artist where, or whether it's just like a featured sort of thing where I'm trying to denote that I had a much more smaller presence. That's more subjective, but it's hard to say what I mean by reach.
It seems like a small part of it
Yeah.
because you choosing to make it a main artist thing is already implied that it's going to be, we want to reach more people.
Yeah.
But it seems like your main points of choosing to make it a main artist or a dual release would be if you really like the song and also like how involved were you in making the song. And you want to be honest in the fact that if you had a very, very small part,
Yeah.
you would rather it not be something that you also put on your page?
Yeah.
Because you want your page to represent something that you've worked on.
Yeah, because
A lot.
that was kind of the main point of like
Okay.
the story I said earlier. It was just like I was fine with having that single be put on as like a main artist because of
Yeah.
how much it was very split evenly. If you're putting me as like a full album on stuff I didn't work on, that's not representing me. It's like, and I want to make sure that I'm representing myself on like my page because it is my page, it is
Yeah.
my work. It's like a storefront. It's like if
Yeah.
someone's gonna start selling like their own product, like it doesn't make sense.
So what about like crediting? Is that one of the things that you tell this hypothetical artist?
Oh yeah, it's all explicit. Like make sure to
Put me as,
put me as
like-
yeah. I'm laying it all out. I'm like,
Are you
put me as this.
a prod Castro in the title person, or are you just like, I'm okay with being in the song credits?
Well, if it's someone that's using like a beat, then yeah, I would like to have my name
On
sort of thing.
like
on
the song title.
oh, that's hard just because I don't think
Like
it's that.
Demons prod Castro.
I mean, I just want it listed somewhere. Like,
Okay.
it doesn't have to be as like explicit because I do recognize just for myself too, titling is very stylized for every artist. For someone like me, I like to have a specific look for how my songs look like. But I'll make sure in the credits, like, who worked on it, everything. Like, it's almost like the
Okay.
liner notes will have everything. But like title-wise, maybe I do want to keep it clean. Or maybe they have an aesthetic where they just do, all caps and they don't put any other detail. It's like, as long as I'm mentioned somewhere, like, I'm okay with that.
That's interesting because I know the current feel of producers being kind of
Front and center.
not necessarily front and center, but represented.
Well,
Like, a little bit better.
I was saying I felt represented if they've tagged me in like
Okay.
social media. It's very obvious,
Okay.
I don't want to like just hidden where it's like who did this,
Yeah.
sort of thing. But it's just simply in the title of like if they want to keep everything clean for this aesthetic that they have, then yeah, I can work with that. As long as everything else is like it's plainly obvious that I worked on it.
So we're talking percentages. For me, what I wanted to talk about with percentages was I usually have things quartered or at least halved. So this is what I thought in the beginning, but it's changed a lot now. But if I'm only working as like a new artist, I split everything in half. So
Okay.
50% is the vocalist, the performer, and the names that are going to be on, that are promoting it, that are singing it, that are performing it.
Yeah.
Then the other half are the people who make the music, the beat, all the instrumentals, and then everything else that has to do with the making of the
Yeah.
song. And then from there, I split the top end. The top end, I'm thinking, is the artist side, the singer side, the performer. I split that with the performers that I'm asking to feature. Depending on how much they're going to be involved in the marketing process is how much I'm gauging whether or not they're getting a bigger portion or a
Yeah.
smaller portion.
I see that.
Generally half of that. And then half equally as there are more people involved.
Yeah.
And depending on how much they're involved, they get a portion of that pie. Now it's a little bit different for me, but I think that's a good starting off point. So if
Especially
you're
for like a
making
new artist, that's trying to get into it, try to keep this.
if you're
simple.
making the song and you're singing on top of it, you should have at least 75%.
Do you do any like upfront costs?
Oh, right. Yeah. If people are asking me to feature, then I just ask for an upfront cost. I'll probably start asking for publishing as well, but I won't ask anything off the master because I'm not going to be involved with that. Unless they want me to be involved, and then that's a separate conversation of I need splits too.
Yeah. And
But-
at that point, you're not doing like a full like, oh, here's an upfront and give me 50%. It's like you're willing to negotiate. Like,
Yeah,
oh,
we're
here's, like-
looking at all those different things. But if they're asking me for a feature, then I am asking them to pay me for that feature because it's gonna take time for me to do that. And depending on how long it takes for me to do stuff and the amount of value I bring to them is how much I charge.
Yeah.
Publishing, I usually things are split pretty evenly for the most part for beats and so that's more of like what I just talked about with the master split is similar with publishing and crediting. If I'm a primary artist, I'm getting more. If I'm a featured artist, just whatever is fine.
It was like talking about earlier, where it's like when it's a main artist, the scope is different. And that's what it's like. You can't just assume that it's like, oh, someone's going to want this because it's mutually beneficial. It's like just because things sound like it'll be in our favor, that is not what we would want to agree with sometimes.
And all of these things we should be talking about at the beginning.
Exactly. Yeah.
At the beginning,
This is-
before the work gets done.
yeah. This
we
is
should
not
be talking about this.
This is not something that should come as a surprise or at the end. Like
Yeah.
this shouldn't be sprung upon like now that we did all this work.
Yeah.
It's like, no, like
So that was my
we
mistake.
come with this earlier.
In the story I was telling you, that's my mistake of not establishing that first.
You already worked on everything, huh? I'm guessing.
Yeah, everything was already done, and then
Yeah.
kind of hit me with this. But we should have talked about that first, got it in writing of some
Yeah.
sort, like Instagram DMs, emails, something that talks about like what are the splits going to look
Yeah.
like, what is everything.
'Cause that at least is a written record.
Yeah.
You know, something that you can cite back and like, hey, you did say this. This is,
Yeah.
laid out.
But of course,
That'll save you a lot.
so like we talked about what we expect out of people, the ideal situation, but it doesn't apply to everything because you were talking about there's a lot of exceptions for you.
That is true.
So what I want to see, like, what are the compromises you make in terms of when you're working with other artists, when you're thinking of these percentages
Yeah.
and primary artists, whatever. It's like, what are the compromises that you make? It's like, what is something that makes you like go away
Yeah.
from the standard?
It's just so funny. Like we've set up like this whole standard and like this structure, and like
Yeah.
I'm talking about make sure to do all this, this, and that. And I think the compromise that for me is just, do I care? It's hard. I guess not. Do I care? But sometimes there have been moments where I'm like, this doesn't matter. Like this is such a small issue in the end.
Are you talking as a whole, like it doesn't matter, or are you taking things into consideration that's making it not matter?
Oh, I was, yeah, in a specific scenario, I'll think about like, does it ultimately, like, it's not a unilateral sort of thing. It's more of just like, whether it be how much work is in front of us to like rectify something, or whether or not I'm trying to hash out like all these details and maybe they're being a little bit like wishy-washy on like percentage or something.
Yeah.
You know, they'll agree on a split, but sometimes I'll just even think about like, in the big picture of all, it's like one song. I'm trying to say my own mental health, you know what I mean? Like, if I'm going to be losing sleep over this, that's when I know that I'm crossing a line where it's like, all right, maybe let me rethink this. Let me take a step back. How much am I really going to then cause this like firestorm of just like go scorched earth, rip into this person? Because in the end, it's like, I don't want to do that. That's not how I want to carry myself. I don't need that for my own health. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so you're looking out for your mental health.
Yeah.
Like
I think that's like the big one.
if your mental health is kind of like going to a point where it's like it's too much, you're
Yeah.
kind of debating whether or not it's even worth
Yeah. Going
sacrificing yourself.
I mean, I'm not trying to say don't stick up for yourself, but it's like, if it really is just what ends up being like a small song or something, and it's like from an artist that is,
Yeah.
just starting out, and there's no need to like go crazy on them, you know what I mean? And like, because I think a lot of artists kind of feel like they have to, because you want to be protective of yourself and you don't want to be taken advantage of. And it's like, that's good, but I think there can be that line where, making sure you're maintaining a brand or something, or like making sure you're like, I'm owed this and all this stuff. You may accidentally overstep that and find yourself burning a lot of bridges, down the line, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it's like, it's something to really think about. When would you start like making a compromise?
So I understand the mental health aspect of it. I think I accommodate for that.
It's like, I go to therapy. That's how I deal with that.
No, like, so if for me it takes too long to fix the problem, it's like it's taking too much of my time to focus on this problem when I could be doing other things or thinking about other things. That's when I dial it back and be like, okay, I don't have the resource to fix this issue. So that's when I start thinking of different compromises that I can make. So with my story, I compromised with them. I wanted a percentage and I wanted them to put me as a featured artist.
Yeah.
They came back at me with, why, and then nothing else.
Crazy answer. Like, that's kind of psychotic.
They also offered me a huge split on the song, and nobody else, their other featured artists aren't getting anything.
Everybody else.
Nobody else is getting anything. I'm getting this huge percentage on the song, which I felt was pretty scummy.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to what I was saying. They may say like, that's in your favor, right? You would want to agree. And it's like, you can't just bribe me out of this,
So given like all of the moral issues that I had with it and the time consuming factor that it had, it was also nominal in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
So I was just like, whatever, just pay me my feature fee and we'll call it good. And that's basically what happened.
What ended it there,
I would also say if you're working with your friends or people you want to build relationships with, you just start to take compromises on certain things. So I think my first feature that I had that really helped me grow, and I think I got a really big bargain for, and it's a testament to them more than it is to me, but it was with Limbo. And we split that song evenly.
Yeah.
And at the time, I didn't know what it was, like what splits really mean. But like looking back on it, I have no regrets of getting that chance to work with them. And also, I feel like giving them what they're due
Yeah.
at the same time. So all of those things kind of factors into being able to compromise from that standard. So what are some things that you would not compromise for? There's a lot of things that we can make exceptions about, but what should we not do that for?
Okay, I would say something that's changed for me is that because I'm someone who's very like self-sacrificing. Like I'm the person who will like put up with like more stress upon myself to make sure I'll keep the peace, you know, and that's really bit me hard, you know.
I think everybody in this room is like that.
What are you trying to say?
Everybody in this room.
But knowing that about myself, I have to realize that it's like, okay, because I don't want to be taken advantage of in that regard because it can be, you know, it's like that sort of thing. You kind of have to be careful. Like, I don't say that to like be wary of everyone, but it's like, if you know about yourself where it's like, oh, you're the type of person to like keep the peace and not, you know, make sure to stick up for yourself. But in this case, you don't have to be the bigger person in this regard. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be, and not to say you don't have to be nice, but I'm just trying to point out, you don't have to make this compromise because you're going to make yourself feel good. It's like, well, I'm going to come off as a better person. It's like, no, if doing that involves you losing more resources, if you somehow lose writing credits, money off of it, you're thinking that the compromise is going to come like, oh, at least I could be the bigger person here. That don't compromise. Like that is, if it's going to hurt you, that is not a compromise. You're just hurting yourself.
Yeah, it reminds me of, I think their name is BB Rexa.
Okay.
Don't cut that out. I deserve to be embarrassed for this.
Right. Utterly confused.
They do like vocal work for a lot of different artists. They're a songwriter and they have an amazing voice, but they got a chance to, am I right?
Oh, wow.
I was right, but
Thank you, Connor, our producer.
Definitely said it wrong. But they were in a situation where I think David Guetta, like a lot of
so it's a pretty big thing.
Big artists were on there on the bill for one song, and she was also on the song, but was not credited.
Oh, that sucks.
And it was because in the marketing rollout or the radio, it's too long.
Oh my God.
There's too many artists, so we had to cut you out.
That is
but
BS.
They fought tooth and nail for it.
Yeah.
And they finally got their credit. They finally got what was due to them. And yeah, I think those are the kind of things that you need to stick up for yourself for. Also, in terms of being the bigger person, there's no need. Especially when you know that they're manipulating you to feel that way, to feel like you're actually the one bringing us down.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to do that,
take the worst deal, you know, take the worst deal where you somehow lose all credit and money off of work that you did and are rightfully owed.
If anything, if you have trouble, like I'm sure you don't need this advice from me, but what I've learned for myself, because I have a hard time saying no to things when things are less just like really easy to do, but I don't want to do them. Especially in like songs and stuff, I just practice saying no to like really, really small things and learn how to take it like as things go along. Because you'll be surprised at how many people get really angry at like the smallest thing. I've said no to just like, oh, you should be a part of this. And I was like, no, like right at the beginning. Like, it's okay. It's going to take up a lot of time. I'm just going to say no to this. And then they're so shocked that I would say no.
It's a good litmus test and also just good life advice.
Yeah, I remember a specific time in my life. I had waffles in the fridge. I ordered a lot of waffles in the fridge. And then I was sitting down and then we invited a guest into the house.
Okay.
And then someone asked me...
This is all an analogy for music.
Yeah. Someone asked me...
I can hear this. I know where it's... I don't even know.
Can they have a waffle? And I said no to them. And then they were like, why? Which goes back to the first thing we were talking about. It's such a small thing to say no to, but they got super angry and very passive aggressive about it, like later on.
Oh, God.
And it was my worst no experience.
And that just traumatized you for the rest of your life, huh?
Yeah, so now I just say yes to things and just accept people's conditions.
And that's your final like lesson there. It's like say yes to everything and make sure to avoid conflict.
But I honestly think
Yeah.
that you should try just saying no
Practice
to
that. Gives you a lot of power.
just easy things. And yeah, it just keep yourself sane by having just a regular set of numbers that you know that make sense to you, with like the percentages, publishing, know what your fee is,
Yeah.
know your standards of like crediting, dual release, all that stuff. If you have that in your mind, then you know what to stick up for.
Yeah.
If you don't, then you kind of just like go with the flow a little too much. But I think that's it for today.
Solid.
Yeah.
I learned a lot.
You learned a lot.
I shouldn't have. You know what? I don't know why you said no to me about those waffles. I got really mad.
Yeah, I was talking about you.
I know. All right.
But anyways, if you're enjoying the show, feel free to follow us on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram at Little Music Podcast, and on Twitter at Little Music Pod.
And if you're really enjoying the show and you'd like to become a supporter, you could follow us or join actually our Patreon at patreon.com/littlemusicpodcast.
And you can follow me on Twitter at Keep It Inside too.
And you can follow me at my social media handles at It's Castro.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks.